Okay, good good day everyone. Meron naman tayong bagong lesson for today. Kakatapos lang natin mag-solve ng mga derivatives ng polynomial functions. So ngayon naman, we will try to expand our knowledge sa pagkuha ng mga derivatives. In this case, we'll discuss the derivatives of trigonometric functions. Okay? So, itong mga trigonometric functions, napakarami ng applications nito sa engineering. Okay? Pwede rin yan sa meteorology, geology, tsaka electronics. Napakarami pang iba. Kaya naman, importante na aralin or kung papaano kumuha ng mga rates of change ng mga ganitong functions. Okay? So, in this video, I will be discussing or I will introduce you to the derivatives of the six basic trigonometric functions. Yan yung sine, cosine, tangent, secant, cosecant, tsaka cotangent. Okay? So, we will derive muna yung sa sine function and then yung iba naman, bibigay ko yung formula. Okay? So now, let's start by discussing yung derivative ng sine function. Okay? Kasi dahil itong sine function, ito yung pinaka-entry natin or gate natin papasok doon sa mga derivatives ng mga trigonometric functions. So kailangan i-prove natin na makukuha natin yung derivative ng sine function, di ba? Although marami sa mga calculators natin ngayon can get the derivatives ng mga ganitong function and actually they can graph, no? They can show or display yung mga graph ng mga trigonometric functions. But then dito sa ating discussion ng derivatives of trigonometric functions, we will derive dun sa formula natin ng derivative of a sine function. Okay? So, kumbaga, i-define natin siya. Okay? Without using our calculators. So now, let's start with defining our function, no? So let's say we have y is equal to sine of x. Okay? So in this case, siguro lagyan natin ng na parenthesis para sine, no? Sine of x. So in this case, we want to get ano ba yung kanyang dy dx. So question mark sa atin yun ngayon. Again and again, yung ating formula ng pagkuha ng mga derivatives, di ba? Ang usual na ginagawa natin is papalitan natin yung y ng y plus delta y, and then yung x papalitan natin ng x plus delta x. So yan yung gagawin natin ngayon. So first step natin, replace natin yung y ng y plus delta y, and then yung x naman, we will replace it with x plus delta x. Okay? So ganyan siya. Then second step is for us to ilipat natin yung y sa kabila. Ilipat natin yung y dito. So, yung ating delta y will now become sine of x plus delta x minus y. Okay? So, nilipat natin sa kabila yung y. Tapos, papalitan natin tong y in terms of x, no, para puro x tong nasa right side ng kanyang original equation. So, delta y is now equal to sine of quantity x plus delta x minus sine of x. Yan. So kung mapapansin ninyo, dito sa right side, puro x na lang siya yung nakikita natin. Then sa left side, we have the delta y. Now, what we are going to do is to expand itong ating sine, no? Sine ng x plus delta x using the identity. Okay? So, remember yung ating identity or formula natin ng ng sine of addition, a plus b. Okay? So, equal ang sine of a plus b, equal yan sa sin cos cosine. Okay? Sine ng a, cosine ng b, plus cosine ng a, and sine ng b. Okay? So, in this case, pag isulat natin yung ating sine ng x plus delta x, okay? So, gagamitin lang natin to. Sine ng x, cosine ng delta x, plus cosine ng x, and then sine ng delta x. Okay? So, huwag natin kalimutan guys yung parenthesis, ha? So, in this case, lagyan natin ng parenthesis to. Then, ito rin, lagyan natin. Kasi yun yung pinaka-argument ng sine tsaka cosine. Okay? So, sine x cosine delta x plus cosine ng x and then times sine ng delta x. So, yun yung ipapalit natin dito. Papalitan natin to, i-expand natin siya. Okay? So, in this case, papalitan ko na yan, ha? Yung ating delta y will now become equal to sine ng x cosine of delta x plus cosine of x times the sine of delta x. Okay, so pinalitan ko na ito. Okay. So ito naman, ibabalik ko lang siya minus the sine of x. Yan. So medyo na-expand na natin siya. Now, what we are going to do is to combine yung mga similar terms. Okay? So when we combine yung similar terms kasi natin dito is yung sine ng x, ito, tsaka itong sine ng x na yan sa first term. No? So in this case, ang gagawin natin ay i-factor out natin yung negative sine x. So therefore, delta y is equal to negative sine of x times, so matitira dito, 1 na lang siya, no, dahil finactor out ko siya. 1 plus, dito naman, magiging minus pala yan, no? So, minus cosine of delta x. Ganyan. Tapos, itong second term, hindi naman siya nagalaw, no? So, as is lang siya. So, plus cosine of x sine of delta x. So, ganyan. Now, medyo mahirap pa rin kunin yung ating delta x dito. Kaya naman, gagamit tayo ulit ng identity. No? So, para mapalitan natin to, kasi dito walang problema, makukuha natin yung limit nito mamaya dahil nakiwala yung x. Pero dito, mahirapan tayo. Kaya naman, we will replace this expression ng ibang identity. So we have another identity. Okay. Meron tayong identity na pag sinabi nating 1 minus cosine ng A equal daw yan sa 2 sine squared of 1/2 A. Nagets? Therefore, kung delta x yung gagamitin natin, yung ating 1 minus cosine ng delta x equal yan sa 2 sine squared ng 1/2 ng delta x. So, yun yung gagamitin natin, pampalit dito. No? Ito ipapalit natin dito. Okay? So, ipalit na natin siguro. Ito tayo sa taas. Yan. Pag ipalit natin yan, we now have yung ating delta y equal na ngayon yan sa negative sine of x, right? Negative sine of x times, papalitan ko na siya, magiging 2 sine squared of 1/2 delta x. Yan. Diba? Oops. Yan. Pinalit ko lang siya dito, ha? Tapos, kokopyahin ko na yung susunod na term dahil wala naman tayong ginawa dyan. Cosine of x times sine of delta x. Yan. So, ngayon, um, ang gagawin na natin dahil nasa isang term na lang yung ating mga delta x, pwede na natin i-divide, no? Pwede na natin i-divide ang lahat ng yan sa delta x. Okay? So what we will have at the left side ng ating equation, delta y divided by delta x. So kada term dito sa right side, di-divide din natin, no? So we will have negative sine ng x, right? Tapos, dito ko na lang siya i-divide. Okay? So ito magiging 2 sine squared ng 1/2 delta x, okay, all over delta x. Ganyan. Plus cosine of x times the sine of delta x divided by delta x. Yan. So now we are now ready to get the limit, no? Para makuha natin yung derivative, di ba? Ang derivative with respect to x ng isang function, limit, it is equal to the limit as delta x approaches 0. Kung ano man yung function natin na yan. Di ba? So, ganun din dito. We will now get the limit nitong mga to, nitong terms na yan. Pero bago natin gawin yun, kailangan medyo meron na tayong knowledge kung ano yung mangyayaring susunod. Okay? So, burahin ko na muna siguro ito para lumuwag tayo konti. Okay? So, now we will get the limit, no? So, yung ating dy dx equal yan sa limit as delta x approaches 0 ng delta y over delta x. And dito, in this case, it will now become the limit, no? So, kada isa ng ating limit, yan, ng ating, ito, kada term, no? Ay kukuha na natin ng limit. So, ito ay negative sine x, di ba? Times kung ano man yan. So, in this case, ibababa ko na yung 2, guys, no? So, pag naging denominator siya, magiging 1/2 siya. So, sine squared ng 1/2 delta x divided by 1/2 delta x. Okay, sana nagets natin yan. Plus, the limit as delta x approaches 0 ng itong buo na to. Cosine of x, then sine of delta x divided by delta x. So, ganyan siya, no? Yan. Ngayon, lahat ng may mga x, pwede natin yan ilabas kasi ang kinukuha na natin ng limit ay yung delta x. So, lumalabas na sila ay coefficient na lang ng ating functions. Kaya naman, we can now rewrite yung ating dy dx as negative sine, right? Negative sine x times the limit, no? Times the limit as delta x approaches 0 ng sine, paghihiwalayin ko yung sine, guys, no? Kasi gagamit tayo ng identity. So, sine of 1/2 delta x all over 1/2 delta x times sine ng 1 half delta x. Ganyan. Ito naman, lalabas ko rin yung cosine. Cosine of x times the limit as delta x approaches 0 ng sine delta x over delta x. Alright. Ngayon, so medyo derivation itong ginagawa natin. We can now say, yung theorem natin, no, pinag-aralan natin sa video number 1 siguro yan, or 2. Okay? Na yung limit as x approaches 0 ng sine of x over x ay equal sa 1. Okay? So, pinag-aaralan natin yan. So, ngayon, kung mapapansin natin, papalitan lang natin ng delta x yung mga x, we can now have, therefore, yung limit as delta x approaches 0 ng sine of delta x all over delta x ay equal din yan sa 1. So, ito pala daw ay, ito to, magiging 1 pala to, no? And also, isa pang mangyayari dyan, yung ating dito, yung sine 1 half, no? And also, the limit as delta x approaches 0 ng sine of 1 half delta x over 1 half delta x equal din yan sa 1. So, ang natira na lang sa atin guys ay yung ating ito, limit ng 1 half delta x tsaka itong cosine na lang. Therefore, if we are going to rewrite itong lahat ng to, yung ating dy dx, it is now equal to the negative sine of x. Right? Tapos ito magiging 1, no? Magiging 1 na lang yan. So, ang natira dyan ay yung limit, the limit as delta x approaches 0 ng sine of 1 half delta x plus cosine of x na lang. So, nawala na ito. No? Nawala na itong expression natin na to kasi nga 1 na lang siya, equal na yan sa 1. Tapos ito rin, nawala na rin to. No? Dahil equal na rin yan sa 1. So, ang natira na lang sa limit, itong sine 1 half over x. And if we are going to evaluate itong mga to, ang matitira sa atin ay substitute natin yung 0, negative sine of x times the sine of 0, right? Sine of 0 plus cosine of x. Therefore, we can now say that the derivative with respect to x ng sine of x, right? Kasi yun yung function natin eh. Di ba? Is equal to, ito magiging 0 na to guys, no? Dahil ang sine ng 0 ay 0. Kaya naman ito ay magiging 0 na lang din. No? So, 0 na yan. So, natira lang sa atin dyan ay cosine ng x. So, the derivative of sine of x, it is equal to cosine ng x. Okay? So, ganoon lang pala siya. No? Napakahaba ng ating derivation, pero the essence is the same. The derivative, again, no? The derivative of sine of x is equal to cosine of x. Alright? So, let's try to solve with this example. Ang first example natin would be to find, so let's say we have y is equal to x squared sine of x. We are to find dy dx. Question mark. That's question mark. No? So how are we going to solve for that? So ang alam lang natin, the derivative ng sine x ay cosine x, tapos ang derivative ng x squared ay power formula, no? So in this case, gagamitin natin yung ating product rule. Okay? So to get the y prime or dy dx ng product ng dalawang functions, it will be the first function, which is x squared, times the derivative, yan, ng second function. Okay? Sine of x, plus the second function, that's the sine of x, times the derivative of the first function, which is x squared. Okay? So ito ay product rule. Okay guys, pakitandaan, yung ating product rule, ginamit natin dito. Now, kung pinag-aaralan natin yung polynomials, hindi pa natin agad ito masasagot. Kasi magkakaroon tayo ng derivative of sine of x. Di ba? Pero since pinag-aaralan na natin yung derivative ng sine of x, no? The derivative of sine of x, sine x, is equal yan sa cosine x, right? Since, ulitin ko, the derivative of sine of x with respect to x is equal to cosine x, masasolve natin tong ating function or yung derivative na to. Therefore, we can now say that the derivative ng function na given sa atin with respect to x ay equal yan sa x squared times cosine of x, right? Plus, so lagyan lang natin to ng ano, na parenthesis para maganda naman. Plus sine of x times the derivative ng x squared, which is also equal to 2x, right? Yan. So, i-rewrite pa natin na mas maayos yan. Dy dx is equal to x squared cosine of x plus 2x then sine of x. So, ganun lang siya. No? In-apply natin yung product rule, no? Product rule, and yung ating formula ng sine of x. Okay? So, whenever you are trying to solve yung mga product, lagi nyong i-state yung ganitong representation, no? The derivative with respect to x ng sine x. Now, if medyo kampante naman kayo sa solution ninyo, pwedeng hindi. Pero I suggest, bilang mga beginners sa subject na ito, ilagay pa rin natin yung notation ng ddx. Okay? So, let's try to solve another problem. Okay? Burahin ko lang muna siguro to. No? Yan. So, let's try to solve another problem. We are to find the derivative with respect to t ng 5t squared minus 6t plus 3 sine of t. Okay? Sine of t. So dito, i-apply natin yung distributive, no? Ibig sabihin, kada term dun sa ating polynomial or expression or yung ating function, pwede natin kuhanan ng derivative, no? Therefore, it is now equal to the derivative with respect to t ng 5t squared minus the derivative or plus siguro, plus the derivative with respect to t ng negative 6t plus the derivative with respect to t ulit ng 3 sine of t. Right? So in this case dito, ang sagot natin dyan, equal yan sa 5 times, bababa natin yung 2, no? 2t. So ang derivative ng t squared ay 2t plus yung negative 6 naman, negative 6 times the derivative ng t, which is equal yan sa 1. Okay? Plus 3 times the derivative of sine ng t, which is cosine of t. So, simplify pa natin. Yung sagot natin will be 10t minus 6, di ba? Plus 3 cosine of t. Ganyan. Ganyan siya. So, next we have we are to find the derivative of derivative of sine of x divided by 4x. Ganyan. So in this case, para makuha natin yan, gagamit tayo ng quotient rule. Di ba? Ang quotient rule, it states, di ba na, gagawin natin, the denominator, okay, denominator times the derivative ng numerator plus the numerator minus the numerator times the derivative ng denominator divided by the denominator squared. So gawin natin yan. Okay? So sabi, denominator, so 4x, times the derivative of the numerator, which is sine of x. Right? Minus the numerator, anong numerator natin? Sine of x, times the derivative of the denominator, 4x. It is divided, all divided by quantity denominator squared. So, ganyan siya. Okay? So, i-simplify pa natin, sagutan natin yung mga derivative na nandyan dyan sa numerator. We now have quantity 4x times ano ang derivative ng sin x? We know that the derivative of sin x is cosine ng x. So, minus ng quantity sin x, kinopya ko lang, times ano ang derivative ng 4x? It is only 4. Diba? So, divided by, so i-expand na natin ito, no? Gawin na natin, sige, 4x squared pa rin para hindi na tayo mag-divide pa. So, i-simplify natin per term, no? So, ibig sabihin, itong first term, ang mangyayari dyan, magiging cosine x na lang siya, divided by 4x. Bakit? Kasi mag-cancel yung isang pares ng 4x dito, no? So, isang 4x na lang yung matitira. Minus sin x divided by, so mag-cancel yung isang 4, so matitira na lang sa atin is 4x squared. So, yan yung ating derivative ng sin x divided by 4x. Okay? So, ganun lang siya. So, tatandaan lang natin na ang derivative with respect to x ng sin x ay equal sa cosine of x. Okay? So, solved. Now, let's go on to the next derivative. We are to get the derivative naman ng cosine. So, when we try to solve naman yung sa cosine, same din ang approach natin sa sine. Okay? So, ganun pa rin. Let's say we have y is equal to cosine ng x. So, we want to get y prime or yung ating dy dx. Question mark yan. So, again and again, gagawin ulit natin y plus delta y, it is equal to cosine ng x plus delta x. Right? So, in this case, lipat natin ulit yung y sa kabila, ano? So, we have delta y equal to cosine ng x plus delta x minus y. Yan. And then, we have delta y equals cosine of x plus delta x. So, ililipat na natin ulit tong cosine, no? Palit natin dun sa y, minus cosine of x. Yan. And then, ano yung step natin susunod? I-expand natin itong cosine. No? So, again, sulat muna natin identity na yung cosine ng a plus b equal yan sa cosine ng a times cosine ng b minus sine ng a times sine ng b. So, cos, sin naman siya. Now, we will rewrite, no? So, ibig sabihin, yung ating cosine ng a, ng x, no? cosine ng x plus delta x equal na yan sa papalitan lang din natin to, cosine x, cosine delta x, minus sine ng x times sine ng delta x. Right? So papalitan lang ulit natin ito using this identity. Okay? So i-rewrite natin ulit ha. Therefore, we now have delta y equal to cosine ng x, sabi, cosine ng delta x minus sine ng x, then sine of delta x. Right? Minus cosine ng x. So ito yan, kinopya ko lang ulit. And then, i-divide na natin. I-factor out ulit natin yung cosine x dito, no? Cosine x. So we now have delta y, it is equal to negative cosine of x, right? Times 1 minus cosine ng delta x. Minus sine x times sine delta x. Okay? So, pag medyo masipag-sipag kayo mag-solve, sundan nyo lang yung ginawa natin sa sine function. No? Pero in this case, tuloy lang natin. Ang lalabas sa ating delta y divided by delta x ay ganito siya. So let's say negative cosine of x times 1 minus cosine of delta x divided by delta x minus sine of x, right? Times sine of delta x over delta x. And now we are now ready to get the limit, no? So ang limit, so para makuha natin dy dx, it is equal to the limit as delta x approaches 0 ng delta y over delta x. And it is equal, in this case, we now have the limit as delta x approaches 0 ng, sa first term natin, we have negative cosine ng x times 1 minus cosine delta x all over delta x, right? Plus the limit as delta x approaches 0 ng, minus pala to, no? Kasi minus siya. Minus the limit ng x as delta x approaches 0 ng sine x times sine of delta x over delta x. Okay? So, ang alam natin kanina, yung ating first term, equal yun sa 0. Kahit anong gawin natin, mag-equal lang to sa 0. Yan. And also, yung theorem natin, di ba? That the limit as as x approaches 0 ng sine of x over x ay equal yan sa 1. Therefore, yung limit as delta x approaches 0 ng sine of delta x over delta x, equal din yan sa 1. No? So, ibig sabihin, ito pala, magiging equal yan sa 1. Okay? So, ang natira na lang sa atin dyan, okay, so we now have dy dx equal to the limit, 0 na yun, ano? Ang natira na lang sa atin ay negative sine x times the limit as delta x approaches 0 ng sine of delta x over delta x. And in this case, dahil nga equal yan sa 1, ang matira sa atin, dy dx, it is equal to negative sine of x. Therefore, yung derivative with respect to x ng cosine of x equal yan sa negative sine of x. Okay? So tatandaan natin yan na ang derivative ng cosine ay negative sine. Ang derivative ng sine ay positive cosine. So let's try to solve these examples bago tayo kumuha ng break, short break. So let's try to solve itong let's say we have a function, no? Let's try to find the derivative with respect to v of quantity v squared cosine of v. So ito naman, again, product rule ulit ito. So first function, di ba, times the derivative of the second function plus the second function times the derivative of the first function. Okay? So i-rewrite natin yan. So first function, v squared times the derivative with respect to v ng second function, cosine ng v. Plus the second function, which is cosine ng v, times the derivative with respect to v ng first function, v squared. So ganyan siya. So this will now be equal to, ang alam natin, yung derivative ng cosine ng x. So formula natin, ang alam natin dyan is derivative with respect to x ng cosine of x ay equal sa negative sine of x. So in this case, palitan lang natin yung letra. Therefore, the derivative with respect to v ng cosine of v is equal to negative sine of v. Right? So ito yung ipapalit natin sa derivative na to. No? Yan. Ito yung ipapalit natin. Okay? So, sana nabivisualize natin yan. Sagutan na natin. Yung ating derivative with respect to v ng v squared cosine of v, it is equal to v squared times negative sine of v plus, right, plus cosine of v, ilagay natin ng parenthesis, times the derivative of v squared, which is equal to 2v. Right? So, simplify pa natin further. We now have negative v squared. So, nilabas ko lang yung negative. Sine of v plus, so unahin ko lang muna tong 2v, 2v cosine of v. Right? So, ganun lang siya. Ha? Medyo simple lang siya. Kailangan lang tatandaan natin yung derivative ng cosine ay negative sine. Right? So, magsagot pa tayo, ha? So, let's try naman itong quotient rule naman. So, let's try to solve the derivative with respect to x ng cosine of x divided by x squared. Okay? So, in this case, we have a quotient, no? So, pag quotient, we have the denominator, x squared, times the derivative ng ating numerator. So, d dx ng cosine x minus the numerator, cosine x, times the derivative ng denominator x squared. It is divided by the squared of the denominator, which is x squared, tapos squared pa raw yan. Okay? So, ang pangit na sulat ko, no? So, isulat lang natin ulit, ulitin natin para maganda naman. Okay. So, let's try to solve ulit the derivative with respect to x ng cosine of x divided by x squared. Yan. So, again, ulit-ulit. Yan. Meron tayong fraction. Then, the denominator, x squared, times the derivative ng numerator minus the numerator times the derivative of the denominator. Yan. Time all over the denominator squared. Okay? So sagutan natin yan. Ang alam lang natin, the derivative yeah, of cosine x with respect to x ay negative sine of x. Therefore, sagot natin dito, equal yan sa x squared times the derivative ng cosine x. Again, it is equal to negative sine of x, right? Minus cosine ng x times the derivative ng x squared. Ano ang derivative ng x squared? It is equal to 2 times x. Okay? All over x to the 4, right? So x squared squared. So again, i-simplify pa natin yan. We now have, so dito mangyari, negative sine of x, right? Divided by, so mawawala yung 2 dito, ang naiwan sa denominator is x squared, no? Nabawasan siya ng dalawa. Minus cosine of x. So, ang nag-cancel dyan, yung isang x, tsaka yung isang x dito sa denominator. So, 2 cosine x divided by x cubed. Okay? So, yun yung sagot natin. No? So, sana meron kayong medyo na gets ninyo yung derivative ng cosine x dyan. No? So, before we get to the next function, yung tangent, let's have a short break. Okay?